You get the contract before you test, before you do your final audition, and then they decide if they're going to sign it. I'm still waiting for them to sign, man. I swear to God. But I always want people to leave thinking like, oh my, we just got hit by a lightning bolt. Like, what happened?
Mm.
What they're going to talk about. They don't sit there with a checklist, knowing your set list, going over the bits before you go through them. The
Yep.
only thing they know is that they came to see you because you're funny. So be funny.
Justus Murimi has no friends.
I had just sent an email. I was like, "Hey man, everything okay?" And and then to hear that,
I'm so dumb, dude. I don't think I realized I like obviously had your email. And then also Instagram is just, it feels more immediate. So I sent you a DM
oh,
and
did
I was,
you really? I'm sorry.
it was my bad. I was like, he's probably not gonna see that because he's probably where he's supposed to be, unlike me. Um, yeah, so I had a call about a show that I'm booking in Seattle, and then it ended, and then my bank called me, and I was like, well, I never talked to them, so this is probably good.
Yeah, man,
Yeah.
I'm pumped. I found out about you because of the California bit you did. Like,
Oh.
it was so good, and so I kind of just want to start there because I was like, I don't know if it looked so spontaneous, and then as I was looking at more of your stuff, I was like, I think he can just do spontaneous really well, like crowd work. But I was like, had he been thinking about this? Like, you know the bit I'm talking about because
Yeah, yeah.
it was
Yeah.
really good. And I'm watching you and I'm going, this guy is on. Was it
Yeah.
spontaneous? Like, had you been thinking about it? Like, how did
Yeah,
that?
no. I first of all appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, so it was completely spontaneous. I remember that was a set that I was doing at Caroline's one night. I think I was doing like 15 minutes, and I had been like, trying a bunch of new stuff or whatever. And then I was loose. It was just kind of fun, like, loose set, doing new stuff. And I'm definitely no stranger to crowd work or to even just checking in with the crowd. Like I like, especially when I'm doing new stuff, I have to feel connected. I have to feel what they're feeling because they contribute to whatever the material you're doing is, right?
Yeah.
So I've never been like a stand and deliver comedian that's got a list of one-liners. Like I want the crowd to feel like they're influencing what's about to come next because they are ultimately, even if you are just doing one-liners. So it's just like a sort of brief moment of checking in. And what most people don't know is that I lived in West Hollywood, California for about a year and a half.
Did you really?
uh, yeah, man. In like probably 2017-ish around then. And then I had moved back to Jersey, and then eventually back to New York City where, I came up in comedy. And so I had such a visceral distaste for California at that time. And it wasn't like, but it's so funny because that video has gone viral like 5 or 6 times now on like different platforms, and it's instant. It goes viral because it's polarizing. It's
Yes.
immediately politically charged, which is funny because if you pay attention, there's nothing political about it. Like you could
No.
almost say what I'm saying about any city in America,
Yes.
that I'm saying it about California, and I look the way I do. So yeah, the lady, and that they were. It's funny because it's funny because that clip starts out with me telling them they're awesome
Oh,
because
yeah.
they were really fun, energy, participatory. They're talking the whole set, which I don't have a problem with because I don't know, my style's fluid. Like I can handle it. There's
Yeah.
one, a lot of comics will make somebody into a heckler by way of shining a spotlight on them and making it clear that they don't really know how to handle audience members that are actually just having a good time. Sometimes people are, but if you're not being like, "Hey, you suck, you should stop comedy," if that doesn't happen, which by the way is a layup, you should
Yeah.
be lucky if you're lucky if that happens. But a lot of the time, people are just enjoying themselves and they've never been to a show before, so they don't know when it's. So I was leaning over to tell them like, "Oh, you guys, I would thank you for being so effusive with your laughter." And so then they mentioned the California thing, and I think I was just on one that night, dude.
Yeah.
Like
It
I
was.
was just like. because I think I had just moved back. Maybe I was like in a conversation with another comic about why I don't like the comedy scene out there, whatever. And then also like you live a place long enough, you start to like dude, I remember one time it rained. Like, and I'm not even talking like it was a fucking tropical thunderstorm. It was like it rained and then the CVS shut down in the neighborhood. Like they were only selling chips because it was dry food that didn't need to be refrigerated. And I'm like, dude, where am I living, dude? This is like a Lego city. Like, this is not a real fucking place. So, so to answer your question in short, yeah, totally improvised. I do a lot of improv and a lot of crowd work on stage because I feel, I've said this before, but like, I feel like there's free jokes just in the ether. And any moment can lead to something that's just as funny for me as it is for the audience, which makes it even funnier for both of us. Because to me, the heart of a laugh is spontaneity and surprise. And if I don't know what I'm going to say, we're both going to be surprised. And so, I definitely have a plan going in. I definitely have material and things I want to talk about. But my favorite stuff is if something can motivate me to jump and pirouette and like really express physically and create something that could not have happened on another show. Any material
Yes.
like could happen on any show. But actually Richard Pryor had sort of a talking point about how he wanted plan A to be show is going to be completely unique to this audience. I'm going to talk about whatever happened today, and plan B is the act. I'll go to the act if it's not there, but I always want people to leave thinking like, "Oh my, we just got hit by a lightning bolt. Like, what happened?"
Do you okay, so there's so many different kind of comedians, but when you're going in, it seems like do you get bored with just the joke, like the one-liner after one-liner? If that was comedy, would you be like, I'm not cut out for it? Because
Yeah,
I've gone through some of your stuff and there's a lot of spontaneous. And I think for most people, if I was thinking about doing stand-up, I would want the one-liner after one-liner to feel prepared. But it almost feels like for you, you're like, man, I want to be as surprised as what comes out as the guy sitting listening to me.
yeah. You're right, man. I appreciate that you went through this stuff and like have seen that. It means a lot, actually.
Yeah.
So for me, the comedian that I've always wanted to be is twofold. It's largely influenced by the comedians that spoke most deeply to me growing up, which is Chappelle, Jim Carrey, Chris Tucker, Lawrence, Mike Myers. I've always loved big, performative, high energy. Dane Cook was huge. And the reason that that stuff spoke to me, because I don't think you decide what you like. I
Yeah.
think you encounter something and it
Yeah.
resonates with some part of you.
Yes.
I always loved about those comics that it felt that, you look at Jim Carrey and the guy's behaving like a cartoon character, but it's because he's physicalizing a very well observed emotional moment. Like I think real emotions look much more like how he behaves
Yes.
than some sort of stoic one-liner comic saying how they felt. As a writer and as a performer, I've always been taught show, not tell.
Mm.
And a lot of comics are great with words. And so the way that they show is through verbiage. But for me, I love to use my body as a tool to tell a story and then also like, you say a one-liner and that's one way to do a joke, but you could also say a one-liner, deliver the same information, and then go like this with your hand. That's free comedy.
Yeah.
There's all this money on the table not using your instrument, right? And so that's always the comedian that spoke to me the most. And then there was the element in me that wanted to represent that I am that way. Like you ask anybody I grew up around, like I was just cartoonish and expressive and emphatic. And I also feel, and and I think it's different for everyone. But for me, I feel that a comics comic, a true comedian at his best is just a human being that is intrinsically funny and communicates anything, what they had for breakfast, the train was late, or a hilarious story in a way that is just inadvertently hysterical. Like Chappelle had said in some interview that comedy is a language I speak fluently.
Mhm.
And that's just a thing I've always believed about myself by way of observation. Like I just saw as a kid that when we're standing in a circle with my friends and everybody's passing the ball around, getting their chance to talk or do an impression from a movie, I just had it. Like it was just
Mm,
about me. There's a million areas where I was inept completely, but comedy for some reason is in my bones. So I have always felt that the sort of purest comedian is who he is. And I'll have my openers with me on the road sometimes, and they'll say, like, I'm kind of nervous, or like, I don't want to forget this bit. And I'm like, you are the material. You can write all morning and memorize all day, but at the end of the day, you should feel like you can just go up there and do the show because you're the show. The audience doesn't know
mm,
what they're going to talk about. They don't sit there with a checklist knowing your set list, going over the bits before you go through them. The
yep.
only thing they know is that they came to see you because you're funny. So be funny. And so my plan A is to always go in and just sort of be organically me. And there's definitely a ton of preparation that goes into it, but I'm not standing in front of the mirror going over line by line. I don't write out jokes in full sentences. I just trust that if I feel what it's more method acting than anything. I just put myself in the place of the feeling that gave me the funny thoughts. And then I also trust that when I'm up there and my back's against the wall and I have to defend myself with the comedic perspective, that I will feel the pressure more than I would if I was thinking about it in the morning, writing it down. And that'll motivate me to show and convince and explain. And I believe that if you are really comedy in your bones, then that's there. And so
Mm.
I developed my style by purposely not preparing, trusting that it'd be there, and then allowing it to come through. And believe me, you bomb
That's
a lot when
yeah,
you do.
yeah.
For a comedian that kills as hard as I do, I bomb way more than any other. You take like some of my peers, like Nico White, Usama Siddiqui, like guys who kill,
Yeah.
and I'll kill just as hard, harder. Fuck you. No, but they don't bomb. These guys, I mean, they'll say, "Oh yeah, I caught a bat
Yeah.
on boat," but they don't bomb like me, dude. Like when I bomb like I'd never done it before. You know what I mean? It's a very high risk, high reward type
Yeah.
of way. But I've really developed and built consistency by trusting it. I'm a freestyle rapper comedian.
Yeah.
You know what
That's
I
what I
mean?
was that it sounds very much like when you hear about freestyle rappers, it's like this is what they live for. It's always been there.
Mhm.
They've honed it. They've definitely gotten better over time, but it was like, sorry, man, this was just always there. It's just like
Yeah,
I feel this way, I think this way.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Okay, so here's when I'm glad you brought this up. When I was going through stuff and I was like, man, he has this. There's all of this like well written out reels, like the Greek one that was like has like 1.5 million, and it's so good. I was laughing out loud. The way you said literally in there, I died. I was like, I was dying. And then I don't know who the other guy was, but when he says beaches like 4 times in that way, hilarious. So that there's this written stuff that you're doing that's like really good. And then there's also the spontaneous. And I was like, man, this is like SNL. It felt like it. But then I also saw that you opened up for Tracy Morgan and Dana Carvey. I was
Yeah.
going, was there any kind of conversation there? How does that even happen that you get to open up for these guys? Like, how does that? I don't know this world like you would because I'm not behind the scenes. It doesn't matter how many interviews I listen to or podcasts from stand-up comedians. I don't know how this world works behind. And I was like, does SNL influence you in any way? Because I don't know. But then what was it like opening up for these guys that are like, they're not just SNL people. They're like the
Yeah.
guys, you
No,
know?
sure. So it's interesting. Like I grew up like anyone else aware of SNL. I didn't really understand what the show was until I was like a little bit older, probably like an early teenager.
Yeah.
But one thing that I would either see on TV, and we might have even had at some point or rented, like they would do like the SNL best of, like
Yeah.
best of viral or whatever. And so those are the sketches I knew. I don't even know if I understood how long the show had been on or that it was on weekly. I just thought it was like some sketch show thing.
Yeah.
And so we'd see like the Sandler ones and the Chris Rock or whoever. And I was obsessed with those sketches. And then like by the time I was in high school, YouTube and the Lonely Island had blown up. And it sort of took on its sort of like new phase, right? Digital video, YouTube music video type thing. And so I started to really love sketch comedy in a new way because it could be something different from what I had saw, which is basically a short play live.
Yep.
But I never I saw that Jim Carrey had hosted it and saw those sketches on YouTube, and I had seen a ton of In Living Color, but I don't even know that I understood that he wasn't on the show at the time because I'm just seeing
Okay.
everything part and parcel. So at I probably had been doing stand up for 3 years when I had my first chance to audition. I did a showcase at the UCB and I did a bunch of impressions because I'd always done impressions, but I never did them in my stand up. Sometimes I'll let one, squeak out if it feels relevant or sort of spontaneous, but I'm not an impressions guy. I just
Yeah.
always could do them and liked doing them. And it was always people that I really liked. I wasn't roasting people. You sound like this, blah. I just I really admired certain actors or whatever, and so in like 2015, 16 maybe, I did a showcase, and I was on the showcase with a couple other people. I can't remember who else was on that showcase or if anyone from that showcase got on the show. Um, but I didn't get it, and so then a few years passed before I ever thought about SNL again because I wasn't one of those kids that grows up thinking like, "Oh man, my dream is to be on SNL."
Yeah.
Me, my dream was always to write and direct films that I could play a character I came up with,
Uh,
and then also to simultaneously tour as a stand-up and make music and make animation and make comics and stuff like that. I didn't SNL was just another show to me.
yeah.
And it wasn't my favorite one, so I didn't care. And then when I was living in Los Angeles, it's very difficult to get on stage frequently. It's just not as full a scene. And I was starting to think about moving back to New York. I was like shooting something out here and I was headlining Caroline's. And then I had gotten past the Comedy Cellar all in a week that I came back to visit. And I took it as a sign to sort of maybe I come back to New York and I really make a go at SNL. So this was probably February before the pandemic, and I had sent a tape to SNL of stand-up impressions and characters, like a 4 or 5 minute tape. And I got some notes back from somebody who worked in the talent department there, just giving me like general encouragement. Yeah, it was like off season. They weren't shooting the week, but I had asked if I could chat with him. Really nice guy. So he calls me and he told me what he liked and he told me what he thinks the show what would work for the show and I asked him like, well, when do you like start looking for people? And he told me it was April. And so I made a choice in that moment that I would shoot a brand new character every single day until April 1st. And then on April 1st, it would be like a whole April Fool's comedy thing where and it was 121 days until then from that conversation. And I like biting off more than I can chew and something that feels a little too difficult to do, but still possible because it gives me a sense of routine and organization. And the other thing is that when you're a comic, you're your own boss. You
Mm,
spend your time however you want to do it. So aside from having a show that you got to be at a certain point, your day is whatever you want it to be, you know? So I was like, all right, well, this will be a way to like build an audience, build a base of content, and then also practice for being on that show should I ever get the opportunity. So every morning I would get up, I would write out ideas or write out a script, and then I would shoot a character. And so 121 days go by, and it also lined up kind of perfectly with the pandemic. I'm now home with no stand-up to do,
yeah.
but all these ideas. At the end of the 121 characters, the last like 20 of them were celebrity impressions, which I had done purposely because I figured at that point this will have garnered more attention, and then people will naturally want to see an impression of a celebrity they know, as opposed to me dressed up like a goofy fireman that they don't know what this is. And so I took, which is, 121-minute long characters is 2 hours of content. I compiled it into like 10 minutes of what I felt like what the best stuff was. And I didn't have a manager or an agent at the time. I had them in the past, but I think for whatever reasons, like I disassembled teams over the years. I went on IMDb Pro, and this is the thing I recommend like new comedians do if they don't know how the industry works. It was like $60 for an account. I made one, or I made a trial and then immediately canceled it. But what I did was I made a spreadsheet of every cast member currently or in the last 5 years, their agent and their manager. So it was like 200 names. And I emailed every single one of them my new reel of characters and stuff and a little blurb about me. And nobody responded. And I was pretty defeated.
Oh,
Uh, I'm pretty good at refilling my own engine, but I remember having a conversation with my brother going like, dude, I just spent 121 days doing this and nobody, and he was like, so what are you going to do? You're just going to send one email and that's it. So I followed up every week or so with every single person on the list. And then eventually three of them got back to me. It was Michael Che's manager at the time. He was pretty nice. And I think he was like kind of interested, but didn't have room for me or something. But he was a nice guy. It was casual chat. It was
yeah.
Heidi Gardner's uh agent or manager, or but I'm not trying to put her on blast, but she was flat out like, how did you get my email? Fuck off. And then and the third one was Alex Moffat's manager, or sorry, agent, who called me the very next day. We spoke for like an hour and a half. She signed me at the end of the phone call, and she's a lifelong best friend and collaborator now. Her name's Marisa, and she's an angel.
No way.
Yeah. So she got me right away. She like she understood my approach. She thought I was brilliant and funny, and also could see how I could work on the show, and had, a couple clients over the years that were on the show. So really had a path for me. And we spent, yeah, that summer like developing my materials and stuff. And that year was 2020. It was COVID. So they weren't doing live screen tests. So what they did is they asked me for two new tapes, and we really honed them down, submitted them. Lorne Michaels had watched it and signed off on it, and they gave me a contract. And then the way that works is you get the contract before you test, before you do your final audition, and then they decide if they're going to sign it. So you've already signed the contract.
Whoa.
I actually have it.
No way.
I printed it out because I actually have screen tested twice. And so I have two contracts from SNL. Let me see if I can find it. I just wanted to frame it because I think it's
Yeah,
fucking
yeah.
I mean, avalanche of paper limit. Yes, this is, I shouldn't be doing this. This is and then yeah, I'm still waiting for them to sign, man. I swear to God. Uh so I got really close that year, and then I was pretty defeated when it didn't happen. And then the next year was post-COVID. COVID's still kind of going on, but like people were seeing each other in person. So then they brought me to Studio 8H, and I auditioned, and I did more characters and more impressions, like in front of Che and Colin Jost and Lorne Michaels. And it's a really cool, bizarre feeling. And the only way I can describe it is if like someone gave you a tour of the Millennium Falcon, right? Because it's a place well that you've never been. So it's
Ah,
weird. It feels like a dream. You're like walking through a place and you're like, I know what's right over there. I don't even have to look. Like I know what's over here and I know what's over here. And but you've never been there. So you're inherently nervous. And then it's all, and by the way, you don't walk around, you don't fuck around up there for 10 hours and then go audition. They pretty much put you in another cast member's dressing room, and you sit there pontificating your future, and then
ah,
they get you. And then they walk you through 8H, right? They walk you through the Death Star, and then they toss you on stage, and they're like, we're gonna say 3, 2, 1, hit record, and then you're gonna do your set. And you do. And I remember you can't not be nervous, but how that manifests could be different. Sometimes it manifests as like extraordinary confidence. Sometimes it's like teeth chattering vibration of anxiety, and you
Yeah.
go through waves because they keep you waiting for like 4 hours.
God.
Uh, yeah, it's a head game for sure. So they bring you in, and I remember, you can also feel there's a table to the left of you when you're on stage, bunch of folding chairs, and it's got Lauren and Colin and Che and a bunch of producers and a bunch of there's like maybe 15 people sitting there, and everybody's quiet and it's all business, which is a weird energy to start a comedy performance with.
Yeah.
But I'm lucky because I'm a stand-up comic and I'm a New York stand-up comic and I've been one for at this point 10 years. So, I mean, again, I've bombed impersonating my father on roller skates. You know what I mean? Like I know silence,
Yeah.
and committing within that has not been hard.
Yeah.
And any stand-up will tell you, like, you just power through. Like, it's up to you to decide terms of the performance engagement. So I remember starting to get really nervous. And then I just had this moment where I was looking around me and I was like, oh, I already won. Like, this is all I wanted,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
I just want to hold the lightsaber. You know what I mean? Like, I don't
Yeah.
really give
Yeah.
if I get into the Jedi Council, because if I don't, then I'm a Sith Lord, and that's tight. You know what I mean? Like, so I was just overwhelmed, and I was like, yo, this is fucking cool. I'm stoked. And I'm here for a reason. And then I jumped onto the stage. I'm such a cornball, dude. I jumped onto the stage, and they were like, all right, we're gonna like count you down and you do your set to the camera. And I did. And you've probably watched enough interviews where you know that they say like, oh, nobody laughs. Nobody
Yeah.
laughs. But if you watch a few more interviews, you find everybody always says like that nobody laughs, but they laugh. They're there. So you'll get a chuckle. And in a vacuum of silence, that chuckles everything, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
a real comic can play to that. It'll be enough. I remember I did some impression. I think I did Mark Ruffalo. And I don't remember if it was like the first, second, or third one I did, but one of the first impressions I did got a big chuckle out of one of the producers. And I was off to the races. Like once I got that, I lit up. And also I had run my set 560,000 times. So
Yeah.
like nothing could have shaken me anyway. At the very least, I would have just stand and delivered with a smile. And then I hopped off stage after that, and I was just really proud of myself. And I don't know. I don't know how to compare how I felt to now because of, hindsight and the reality. But I knew like I felt good about it. But the thing is, you can't know because no feeling you have is indicative of what's gonna, sometimes people say like, oh, I just knew I was gonna. I mean, I thought I felt that way, but you don't because it's just not up to you. Like I did the
Yeah.
best I could have done. And then the next year I showcased as a stand-up because I'd never shown them my stand-up and I was only doing characters and stuff for that show. I'd never done like a character showcase until I had done an SNL showcase, which is ironic. But then I did a following showcase the next year as a stand-up, and I was way more proud of that performance than I was any of the character stuff, just because it's more me. For
Did
me
you
to,
feel like, was it weird going a second time? Was it, or is that normal? Or were you just kind of like, man, don't pull my leg on this? Like, what's
yeah,
going on?
dude, you get resentful and you do feel that way, but there's a dangling carrot, so you only focus on the fact that this is a possibility. And the thing is, if these people that you might imagine some type of begrudging resentment towards are about to be your coworkers, you brush it all off.
Yeah.
So, I mean, ask me how I feel about SNL now. It's a different thing. No, man, it's like you just want to do the job.
Yeah.
And at some point, because like I was on showcases and stuff where I was looking around and I'm like, yo, this is like, come on, what are we talking about here? Like, like you get competitive and you get in your feelings, but by and large, it's just not about you. And it's
Mm,
just not up to you. It's like they are creating a cast. And even in like corporate America, like sometimes they're like, oh, we have a guy with this energy, or we don't have enough women on this team, or his hair sucks. Like it could be anything.
yeah.
And the fact that you're there is the validation and confirmation that you're talented. it's not you didn't get it because you're not talented. It's not you
Yeah.
get it because you wouldn't be good on the show. It's like it's other stupid stuff. I believe casting can get better at their job in terms of like efficacy. It's not. I mean, dude, I've auditioned for 1,000 things. I mean,
Hmm.
I tested for Wild and Out 7 times. Like,
Oh,
at
really?
yeah, bro. At this point in my career, like, there's not a lot of doors I haven't been at. So you can't. I mean, you can always like work on yourself and try to optimize opportunities and how you perform when you feel the stakes are high. But at the end of the day, it's like whether it's SNL, Wild and Out, some ABC sitcom, like I was born not knowing what any of that stuff was, just as an artist. So you could drop me in 1800 BC and I'm still going to like paint and draw
Yeah.
and play music and be silly because that's all I know. So if I get an opportunity to do it on some cool platform, like that's dope. But I also probably would have hated that job, dude. You know what I mean? You can't really let it rip on that
Yeah.
show.
Yeah. Yeah. Not like you're doing like what you're doing now is like you're fully on. Like everything that I watched, you were all out. Like it was like 100 miles per hour, like going all out on this stuff. And that's part of what I was like looking at. And a part of me wondered like your physical comedy. I bet he didn't even know there was a thing called physical comedy until he was in it for a while. And he's like, oh, this is just what I do. I didn't know there was like a name for it because it just seemed intrinsic. Like it wasn't like something you practiced.
Man, I appreciate that. Thank you. I've always aspired for that to be or seen, not even seen, but felt because it's true. Like you ask any of the kids in my freshman gym class, like I roll around. I mean, ask Nico White. Anytime he sees me hanging out at a comedy club before I go up, I'm crouched like spider.
Yeah.
That's just I'm a weird guy, dude. I like I don't feel comfortable without my knees bent, and I if I get mad, I shrug with my whole body. Like I just I don't know. It's a Jersey thing. It's a Greek thing. It's a me thing. It's I don't know. But it's and so it's important to me that everything I am on stage is not a distillation of everything I am off, but an expansion of my reality. Like if you're physical off stage, like we should see that on stage because
Yeah.
that's what makes things uniquely you, and that's what makes you memorable, and that's what makes you a favorite. Every comedian has jokes. You go to a
Yeah.
show, one thing I always hate is when I feel like there's four comics in the lineup and you could interchange their material. I'm like, we don't need you then.
Yeah. Do you okay? So you've been in this for a while, but and maybe you just look young. I'm like, when did you start? Like,
I
and how
started
did you even like? I hear this stuff about like Seth Rogen, Dave Chappelle, like these guys. They're like, yeah, I was like 13, 14. I'm like that, like getting in front of a bunch of adults to like joke around. I didn't have that confidence. I didn't even have that idea. I didn't have that way of thinking. You've been in this. You look so comfortable on stage, and I'm looking at you. I'm like, dude, you look super young. Was it even a confidence thing, or was it more like, oh, finally a place to put this out? Like I don't have a
yeah,
place to like put it out. So
that's
I didn't even know this
definitely
place
part
exists.
of it.
Thank you. I get to
Yeah,
paint, and this is how I paint.
that's exactly right, man. That's definitely a big part of it. It's definitely multifaceted. So I started when the first time I did stand up, I was 17.
Crazy.
Um, I had been flirting with it mentally before I even realized I was writing stand up. I was writing jokes in a notepad and I was a waiter and I was writing on like the thing that you take people's order. I was writing jokes and little dialogues and a lot of scenes and stuff. I didn't understand. I didn't have any framework for what's a stand up joke and what's a script and what's a movie. I was just like I would have these sort of flashes of moments of exchanges and ideas and stuff, and I was just constantly putting them down. And I was studying and practicing, and had spent my entire life working to be a comic book artist. Um, and realizing I didn't just want to draw, but I also want to write stories, create my own characters, led me to start writing shit down. And it was more often than not funny because that's just who I was. And then I had gotten a scholarship for college to go to School of Visual Arts, and they needed me to create a comic book that I had to write. And so it came out as a comedy. And then when I was looking at the script, I was like, this is funny. And then at the same time, I did the play in my high school for no reason other than that I was just like, I don't know, I want to try this. Like I was a lacrosse player and a basketball player and football player, but it was me. I was always drawing and always writing, and so I'd always been obsessed with stand-up comedy. Uh, and so I was just like, fuck it, I want to try it. And so I think they asked me to host something at the high school, some like talent show thing, and I was like doing roast jokes about teachers and students, and so then I went into the city. I went to Comic Strip Live and I did an open mic, and it went well enough that I was like, I'm not going to stop doing this.
Mm.
And so then from there, man, also there were a lot of like really wonderful influences at the time. Like Donald Glover had just popped off, and he was a guy that I knew from the Derek Comedy YouTube sketches. And then my brother put me onto his music, and I saw him acting and doing stand up. And I just kind of had this creative awakening where I was like, I could just do everything.
Yeah.
Who's going to do everything? And to the point of like how I am on stage, that what matters to me most in life, and this is it's a bit embarrassing, is the product of what I make. Not the product, but the result. How the show goes, what people's experience of it, and whether or not I'm proud of it and feel that it represents me is more important to me than how I feel people feel about me as a guy, or how I feel um, generally throughout the day, emotionally, mentally. That's where I live, is like
Hmm.
in this place. And so luckily, caring about that, caring about anything so much, I think makes me a solid guy, because I have my priorities and my focus straight. The reason that I'm confident there doesn't necessarily come from a confidence. Maybe now it comes from a confidence because I've been in the fire
Yeah.
so long
Yeah.
and I know I can't get burnt. But the willingness to try that, the willingness to do a handstand or a cartwheel on stage in a genre where people don't, I think comes from a particularly desperate attempt to make this thing so different and good and special that I can define myself by it. Because without it, I'm pretty floundering. I'm pretty ineffectual. I don't feel particularly great in any way. But with my artistic identity, I feel like my entire value is wrapped up in that, which is not a good thing, but as long as it's going well, it's
Yeah.
pretty good. So
Yeah. No. Okay. So whenever I feel like there are guys like you that end up, there are guys that I notice like there are comics and stand up and all that stuff that end up just doing stand up, might do movies, but they just love stand up. Then there's people that like love stand up, but then they care about more, like the Judd Apatows. Like they love stand up. They'll do stand up because they enjoy it, but they're like, I want to create art and I care about the whole thing. I want to create a movie and I care about how the whole movie feels and how the whole movie is. And then you'll have guys like, Jim Carrey that evolve, that like they're always evolving. They might have started stand up, but they go into, movies, and I mean In Living Color, movies, then going into like serious dramas, kind of like, Robin Williams. There's those kind of people. And for you, I know you're like, do you see as like, I always want to be doing stand up, or is it like I actually have a bigger vision of like, almost like I want to start creating, because you're like writing stuff. So as I'm listening to your story, it feels like at the beginning you were like spilling art just anywhere you could. Like you're waiting tables, art is spilling out onto your notebook. You're just like, I just got to get this out. And so now as you've done stand up for this long, I don't want to say you're bored with it because it doesn't seem like you're bored with it at all. Are you going, where else can I paint? Or are you like, no, is that happening? Or are you just like, no, man, I'm in my element. I just want to stay doing Dave Attell. I just want to do stand up. I just want to keep doing it. I just want to stay at it. Like, where do you see yourself in that?
that's a great way to put it, is where else can I paint? Well, here's what's interesting about that. To me, the medium is decided by the idea. I don't necessarily think in terms of, okay, this is going to be a sketch and this is stand up and I want to do a movie. I just experience creativity,
Mm,
and the nature of the thought inherently has a form. right? If I'm thinking, walking down the street, thinking of a funny dialogue appears in my head, uh, baked into that is whether or not that's film or a stand-up joke. It's decided before me. I service those ideas individually and try to prioritize them based on what is most exciting to me, but also what's good for my career in this moment. Which,
Mhm.
you know, when you're an artist with no boss, that's a hard thing to do. Like, I think the best artists are really decisive, strategic people. That's what you need, because you could have good ideas all day, but some of them don't pay the bills and some of them don't matter.
Mhm.
Sometimes the best thing you can do is edit a stand-up clip of a heckler and post that. And then sometimes the best thing you can do is audition for a sitcom, or sometimes the best thing you can do is submit a writing packet to late night. So you got to be very like judicious. But for me, while I see all of the art as the same thing, coming from the same place and being the same person, I don't distinguish. I also do independently love every
Mm.
form as its own thing. So I I love, fear, and respect stand up too much to ever willy-nilly it.
Mm.
And I also think that I'm good enough at it now that if I phone it in or I'm not really there, I'm really robbing people.
Mm.
Because you know the feeling of when you really like an actor and all you see about the movie is that they're in it, and then you go to see it and you're like, that sucked. It cheapens your experience of their brand. And I just want to make sure that I'm always delivering. So whatever the thing I'm doing, decided by what I'm interested in and what feels like it'll help me reach a broader audience, I'll always put 100% into. To answer your question like more directly, I absolutely want to write and direct films and act. I'll never stop doing stand up. I want to write comics and draw comics. I've got some music projects and stuff, but whatever they are and whatever it is I'm doing is 100%. So I don't see it as like I'm using stand up to get to film.
Yeah.
I go, let me do film because I'm an actor. Let
Yeah.
me write a movie because I'm a writer. Let me do stand up because I'm a stand up. And if one opportunity helps me leverage an opportunity over here, great. Like that's all, gas on the fire. But I'm not trying to escape stand up. I I want to do flicks so more people come see me live.
Okay. I was so curious watching your stuff because I was like looking at everything and I was like, okay, his sketches, people love them. Like the Greek one went massive. There was another one that went massive. There was one where it's like you're in the brain of the guy that's studying, that's reading. He's in class. Jubilation.
Yeah. Dude, well, you know what it is like some ideas don't work another way. Like
Yeah.
had that idea and I could see the whole thing. And I was like, okay, well, this is what that is. I can't do this as stand up.
I genuinely was looking at this and I was like, he's going in so many directions, not in a bad way. I was like, and I guess the answer is like, man, you're really free. Like, I don't think you really believe in a lot of rules. And I know we're coming up on our time. I have one big question that I do want to talk about because I was pissed because I saw that you had been in Austin in September to do Wolf Pup.
Yeah.
And I was like, how did I live in the Austin area? I was like, no, I missed it. I missed it. And so I do want to talk about Wolf Pup. And but the thing that I want to know before that is like it might kind of feel like it's coming out of left field, but did athletics build a discipline in you as a comic that is helping you progress past other comics? Because like like just hearing what you did, emailing the list of like getting a list and emailing them and doing that stuff, and then it coming down to 3, that's disciplined action and doing something every day for 151 days. Like that discipline, I wonder if you're like, man, I see so many comics that are more talented than me, but they just don't want to put in the work, so they're not going to see the same results. And I'm not saying you're not talented, but I'm just seeing a level of discipline in the creative space, which I'm like, usually a lot of times when I meet creative, hyper creative people, it's like the one thing they're missing is like the
Yeah,
discipline, because they've got it, but it's the
totally.
discipline. Do you see that? Because that's like your discipline level seems to be pretty high.
It is. It is. I can be. I somewhat can take credit for it, and then also I think I'm a product of my environment, and that like you know, growing up is like very high stakes to do well. Like you
Mm,
gotta do well. And also I'm the luckiest kid in the world in that my older brother, who is like my father figure growing up, is militantly disciplined. Like he just has so much self-control and self-discipline, and
mm,
he believes in work, and he believes in exhausting yourself beyond all measure. We're a Kobe Bryant household. Like we grew up in Jersey, but like we are Lakers fans. And I'm not even a basketball guy, but I'm a Kobe Bryant guy. And
yeah.
we really like, we're an anime household. We're all about like you just don't quit. To your question, uh I my older brother was like a captain of the football team and captain of the basketball team and natural athlete. And I'm an athletic, physical human being, but I'm not good at sports. And so I always put a lot of pressure on myself to like develop with sports because when you're a kid, that's got your whole identity is you make the baseball team or whatever. Like that's every kid in America. Despite having like drawing and other things that I wanted to do, I didn't know. It was just that's the framework as a kid is you go to school and you try out for the team. So I didn't feel good and like one of the guys. And so I started to build measures of guaranteeing an outcome, which you can never actually do. It's not one to one, but you can come up with a process. And for me, I think I like whole numbers. I think I like, repetitive, daily practices. So I remember in like eighth grade, preparing for like the basketball team, maybe tryouts or something. I was like, I'm not gonna go to sleep until I do 100 push-ups. And so I did that for like, I don't know, 6 months or something like that. And I don't know, when you acquaint, like to this day, man, I take ice cold showers because I like methods of discomfort to prepare me for when I might feel discomfort and to have self trust. Well, if I get on stage and the crowd's weird or I'm weird or whatever, I put myself in ice cold water for 5 minutes earlier today, which I was scared to do, but I was okay. So I can trust, I know what it feels like to be uncomfortable and be okay. And so that's why I work out, honestly, is I like
Mm.
it little masochistic, but I like torturing myself a little bit because it proves to me I'm fucking all right. So yeah, I think discipline comes from there. And then the other thing is like, dude, if you're not disciplined, anybody will tell you this in any life. No one's giving you shit, dude. No one's handing out good jobs. Nobody, the insurance company takes your insurance away if you don't mail them back. Like, you got to do shit. Like, you can't, it ain't free. And also it's a competitive field, and I want to, I'm here to like show up. I'm here to like prove what I think, because every comedian, everybody who does any art form like thinks they're amazing and thinks they're the best, and it's like, all right, well, ain't nobody gonna read your mind and tell you you're right. So like, where are you?
So good. Okay, let's get into you a little bit before we wrap up. Wolf Pup, like, and like seeing you on tour. Is a tour coming up? The special? Like, I was pissed that I had just missed you. Like, I was upset. So, like, where if people want to see you, where can I went to the website, I looked for the tour. It's like coming soon. So, is there anything that you can give us as far as like when you might be in a town somewhere near people that might see this?
Definitely. Here, I got it open right now, actually. A bunch of these are tentative, so maybe I won't read the unconfirmed ones, but there's at least 10 here that are. So I'll be in Wesley Chapel, Florida, South Florida near Tampa. That's Side Splitters, February 22nd to 25th. So it's coming up next week. I'll be headlining Westside Comedy Club on February 29th in New York City. I'll be headlining Dojo of Comedy East, Morris Plains, New Jersey, March 15th. I'll be headlining Nightcap in Los Angeles, California, March 16th. I'll skip these next two, but that'll be San Diego and Miami. So I'll be in San Diego and Miami, but hold tight for those. I'll be in New Haven, Connecticut, May 9th. I'll be in Portland, Maine, May 17th. Portsmouth, New Hampshire, May 24th and 25th. Rhode Island, I think we're gonna move because your boy going to France for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then Austin, Texas, I think July. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll hit you up when I have that confirmed, but
Yes,
I'll
please.
absolutely be in Austin, Texas this year again.
You
Uh,
got to. There's so many clubs now. It's crazy.
I had such a good time, man. We'll talk about it in a second, but like I shot my special wolf pup at the Creek and Cave, which is right there in Austin, like right next to Mothership and Sunset Strip. Like I loved it. I had a blast. And then I got Philadelphia, April 5th and 6th, and then Auburn, Maine, July 20th. So and there'll be more to come, but
Yeah,
that's
come
just
on, man.
what I've been cooking up.
We need some Nick Callas. All right, tell me about Wolf Pup the special. Where can people see it? Like I looked for it and I was like, is it not out? Is it in prep? Like I know these things take time with
Yeah.
specials. You want to get it right. I can't wait because even just for you, just to put a special out, I just can't. I can't wait for you to be able to be like, you like my reels, you like my stuff, you like my. Let me point you somewhere where you can get the full thing. So like, kind of fill us in on that.
Totally. I appreciate that so much, bro. So yes, we shot it in Austin, Texas, end of September. We've been cutting it together, color correcting it, like, the whole works. And then there's there's marketing that has to happen. And then also the company that produced my special is called 800 Pound Gorilla. They put out specials regularly and they have made some amazing ones for really great comedians. So I was super excited to get to do it with them. But so we've been cooking it up for, the past months and it'll be out. We don't have an exact date yet, but it'll be out end of this month, February, or early or mid March. And if you live in New York City, there will be a screening at the Alamo Draft House in the financial district, which I can't wait for because it's going to be a bit of a sort of Nick Callas film festival. We'll do we'll show a bunch of the stuff I've made. There'll be a little cocktail hour. We'll watch the special together. Might be a live show element with a couple of my friends, but it'll be a blast. And the special itself is going to be on 800 Pound Gorilla's YouTube channel in a month's time. So follow me on
Wait,
Instagram at Mr. Nick Callas if you're not already.
yeah, follow at Mr. Nick Callas for sure as well. Okay, man, this is one. Just thank you for your time. I know you're
Thank
not
you.
you're busy. I know you got stuff going on. I also love the interviews you're doing. I don't know your friend's name, but those have been great too. Those reels you guys are shooting. The Jennifer Aniston one, I cannot unsee now, dude. I can't not now when I think of her or see her, I can't not think of that. It is crazy.
Fam, it's so funny you should say that because she was in a Super Bowl commercial last night, and my girl turned to me and she was like, "You're so right." There's something about her face. I feel bad.
All right, Nick, man, this is so great, dude. We love all these same comedians: Jim Carrey, Chappelle. We were influenced by SNL. So great, man. I think we would just be great friends, man. What do you say about being friends?
No,